Hey everybody, I am back from the grave. Well, technically, I've been doing stuff on the main channel for a while now. It feels weird being back here talking about sex again. This video has been in production for a while. 3 months, actually. It's the biggest video I've ever done. Not the longest, no. That honor, I believe, goes to the condoms video. No, this is simply a video that deserved its lengthy production time. Originally, this video was going to be the 100k subscriber milestone video for the main channel before I got doxxed. But hey, what can you do? So what is this? What is my sexual journey? Right off the bat, you shouldn't expect an overabundance of humor in this one. This video is a serious, detailed account of the evolution of my own sexual identity, covering such monetizable classics as the first time I ever masturbated, how I developed a porn addiction, and my own experience with Rule 34, among other things. I get a lot of comments asking why I use a female presenting avatar, if I'm a straight guy. This video won't give you a direct answer to that, but it does present evidence so you can develop your own theories. Because honestly, your guess is as good as mine. I really don't know 100% why I do. It might be something deep down inside me that I've buried for all these years, or it might be as simple as it's just fun. Regardless, you might know me as someone who really values transparency. This will be the most transparent, the most brutally honest video I've ever done and possibly ever will do, and I can't stress this enough. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm going to be talking about some very uncomfortable topics, and I'm not going to hold back at all. I usually do hold back, but not this time. I think you'll soon come to understand why this is the most important video of the channel. Let's get started. Our timeline begins at around 10 years old. It's hard to pin an exact date on these things. According to my doctor, I was starting the annoying process that is puberty. 10 years old. A bit earlier than most boys. It was around this time when, the thoughts start coming in. The little flickers of sexuality that confused me. I didn't fully understand the concept of intercourse. I only knew that I wanted to do it, whatever it was. I specifically remember my doctor giving me a little booklet on puberty and sexual safety, but it got thrown away, so I never got the chance to read it. I remember he also told me to wear a condom whenever I became sexually active, but I didn't think to ask him what a condom was, so it didn't help much. Maybe about a year later, I entered middle school. This was the point where we started taking the religion class. I went to a Catholic school, so this was a requirement for all students, whether or not they practiced Catholicism themselves. You gotta understand, this was a Catholic school, and our teacher was extremely judgmental. I mean, I guess she was just doing her job as a religion teacher, but the way she presented information was extraordinarily biased. I've asked my old classmates about this, and they confirmed. She would tell the girls in our class things like, all boys are perverts, they'll try to look up your skirt if you're not careful. This was middle school, and at this point, the boys and the girls were still in homogenized friend groups for the most part. A friend group of boys and girls. What she said does occasionally happen, even with kids as young as 11 or 12, but it was the way this information was communicated that was alarming. As for the boys, and really the entire class, we were taught the good old Catholic belief that thinking was a sin. Did you think about sex today? Sin. Your body did something while you were asleep? Sin. I'm not Catholic anymore. I still believe in the church as a general institution that can provide good structure to someone's life, and it can be a great community to be a part of. But this is expressly what I have a problem with, and is basically the sole reason for this channel's existence. Stifling sexuality because of a fear reaction. I'm very critical of this part of the faith because of its track record. If you want to see what happens when someone isn't allowed to express their sexuality, or at least ask questions about it, look at the priests. Or, I guess it'd be more accurate to say, look at the priests who couldn't hold it in any longer. Not all priests, obviously. I had a really good priest, actually. But it happens way more often than you'd expect. I don't want to offend anybody who's deeply religious, Like I said, I believe in the church as a great institution for providing a great sense of community, and it pretty much forms the basis of everyone's moral standards. It's great in that sense, but I don't think it's entirely controversial to say that the outdated rules priests have to follow is destroying the church from the inside. You should not be suppressing your sexuality. It only leads to a crisis 30 years down the line. Does that mean I think all kids, no matter what age, should be taught what intercourse is and be given comprehensive sex education? Absolutely not. There's a happy medium for everything. There should be non-judgmental resources out there for people like me who entered puberty early and also had role models around that don't like to talk about it. People like that desperately need answers. Because I had no effective sex education and because there was no one willing to have a conversation with me about it, I began watching internet porn at 11 years old. I don't remember what started it. I think I just saw a picture of boobs one day and eventually found my way onto that one site, which is the only site I used for years. Not sure why I never really ventured onto the hub. It just didn't happen until years later. A few months after discovering porn, I accidentally masturbated for the first time. Yes, it was a complete accident. I think I was in the shower, and I brushed against something, and then it happened. Just like that. I remember being really confused, and I tried to repeat what I just did, only to discover that I could not. Not until the next night when I tried again. And then it worked. So, around 11 years old, I discovered I could do this thing with my body that felt good. But I definitely felt ashamed about it. At first, I thought I was doing something that was actively destroying my body. I used to believe that there was a finite amount of whatever was happening, and by actively doing it prematurely, I was gonna run out. I knew it was something sex-related, so I figured I was sinning, but it felt too good not to do. And you might laugh at that, understandably. Why, as an 11-year-old, were you scared of sinning? Could you be any more of a square? Something that I've learned about myself in college is that I tend to internalize everything. It doesn't matter how much I actually believe it at first. If someone says it more than once, I will start to believe it, no matter how much it doesn't make sense to me. Which is why the docs was so bad for me. There was a brief period there where they were cutting through everything else, and I almost had myself convinced that maybe I am just a pervert. But thankfully, I had you guys to help me through that, and your comments about how much the videos helped you really worked to convince me again that no, I'm not a creep, I just care about this so much because of what I've been through. You know, that's just my religion teacher, the fear response echoing in my brain a decade after the fact. Eventually, I was nearly caught watching porn. I guess somehow someone saw my search history, and they confronted me about it. I lied, and instead I told them that I was looking at this other embarrassing thing. I think I did this to throw them off the scent, and unfortunately it actually worked. After getting my iPod Touch taken away for a few days, I got it back, but it now had parental controls on it. Clearly someone knew what was going on. This stopped me from watching it for a while, but when I inevitably got my first iPhone in 8th grade, there were no parental controls on it, and I was back on it. At this point, I knew I was hooked, and it really felt like a true addiction. The weight of this was immense. I knew I was sinning and was probably going to go to hell for all of these disgusting thoughts. Middle school came and went, and as I entered high school, no answers came. I never got the talk, was radio silence from everyone on the matter. No one talked about this. I kind of suspected that maybe a few others did it too, but it was like the forbidden topic. The extent of my high school sex ed was learning the names of the 7 or so diseases that they have. That was it. I actually remember going to confession and asking the priest if masturbating was a sin, and he just gave me a non-answer and sent me out the door, so no luck there. I'm pretty sure that was the last time I ever went to confession. After this, I really wanted to quit my porn watching habits. It was an everyday occurrence at this point, and I really didn't want to go to hell. I also had an appendicitis scare around this time. I nearly died in the hospital as my appendix burst open, about 10 seconds after it was removed. 10 seconds away from possibly kicking the bucket. It still freaks me out to this day, thinking about being back in that hospital room. And that really put everything into perspective for me at the time. 12 years old, and I really felt like I nearly died there. According to my own brain, I would have gone to hell because I was watching porn at the time. Like Eve, I picked the forbidden fruit. After this, I was determined to quit, but that was easier said than done. Quitting porn is slightly easier than quitting, say, a drug, because there's no physical substance you're becoming dependent on besides your own dopamine. But it's still considered difficult, probably because sex is a natural function. It's similar to a gluttonous person going on a diet. Eating is natural, you're just doing too much of it. And there's a very fine line to walk there. Remember, at this point, no one knows that I was hooked on it. Maybe a few people had suspicions, but no one knows for sure. And I had no idea that millions of teens my age are also addicted. Growing up while the internet was becoming fully mainstream, no one really knew the extent to which every single child was finding these websites. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is true. Every single kid and teen has been to a porn site. They just have. There's only one method that's helped me to temporarily quit porn, which I'll go into later because it doesn't happen until later. So what's going on at this time? The lack of proper sex education outside of fear tactics pushes me further into my own pornography addiction, and my self-hatred for doing so. This is where I started drawing my own characters. The art style based on the sexy furry art I would always see on Instagram. One of the biggest influences for my art was an artist named Inkplasm. They were mostly on Twitter. I was pretty jealous of their abilities, and I always strived to get my art to look as good as theirs. Now, this jealousy went out the window when I saw how pretentious they were about their own stuff, they were on Twitter. I did this for a few years, with my art becoming more and more sexual in nature as I drew inspiration from these types of artists. I was continually in shock that nobody had bothered to stop me. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to talk about it, but I was posting this stuff on Instagram publicly. You know, the people liking and following me on Instagram were my close friends and family, and no one said a word. Nobody wanted to have that conversation, I guess. Whatever the case, I continued to do this until I flat out drew my own porn in my own style. I want to say this was sophomore year of high school. Now, this porn was not good. I was still drawing pencil paper at this point, and it was sloppy, my characters weren't very well fleshed out. It was all very spur-of-the-moment kind of drawings. I don't really remember getting off to these drawings when I was creating them. Back then, the process went like this. I'd make the drawing just like I made any other. Then, maybe if it was good enough, I would create an internal fantasy out of this scenario. Truth is, I just didn't have the artistic abilities to translate a pre-existing fantasy onto the paper. Or I should say tablet, since it was around this time I got my first drawing tablet and personal computer. Then, of course, COVID happened, which gave me even more free time to practice my art, all day, every day. I was really having a lot of fun during this time, further pushing the limits of what you could conceivably call safer work art. Stuff that definitely would have been flagged if it was on my server today. I seriously can't believe no one who followed me on Instagram, none of my role models stepped in and said, hey, you need to stop. Because again, they definitely saw it, they were liking it on Instagram, no one said anything. I'm like showing areola, like it goes that far. I would have been almost 18 now, which means we're finally at the point where it would have been normal for me to be sexually active. But no, I was still in my room, just drawing this kind of Rule 34, basically. I even developed this weird sense of moral superiority for remaining a virgin while my friends probably lost theirs. This was a band-aid fix for the mounting guilt and shame I was feeling for indulging in these feelings. What I was doing was not morally superior. In fact, it was the complete opposite. While people around me are actually going out and, living their lives, becoming sexually active, here I was, alone in my room, planting the seeds for what would become a much bigger problem down the timeline. Suddenly, COVID is over. Finally, I can go outside. I continued to draw this Rule 34 through senior year, and then I graduated. Time to finally get out there and get a traditional girlfriend. Yeah. Nope. I entered college with a bad roommate that I just didn't get along with, which indirectly caused me to retreat even further into my own safe spaces, meaning my computer at my desk and nowhere else. This created a cycle of furry porn as a replacement for human connection. But it wasn't all bad. While I secretly kind of hated the university I was at for my freshman year, I did eventually take a class about world religion or something. Thankfully, this class was entirely non-judgmental. I specifically remember a day where we all walked into the classroom, and in each corner of the room, there was a designated sign. This corner was for agnostics, this corner was for general Christians, this corner was for Catholics, etc. We were told to sit in the corner of the room that best described how we were raised. Out of 20 or so students, only me and one other person were sitting in the Catholic section, and this really surprised me. As a kid, I was led to believe that most people were Catholic. They had failed to mention that once you leave the small Catholic town bubble, this percentage slides downhill fast. Our professor began a lecture on how Catholicism often fails its members by not providing crucial teachings, such as effective sex ed. He actually said it by name. It was incredible. This man was actually talking about the thing I had been wondering about for nearly a decade. After this, some of the walls that had been constructed around me began to crack. This developed further when I transferred schools the next year. I began working at Starbucks with mostly women who were also my age. We became really good platonic friends, and we would occasionally have full-blown conversations about our sex lives, or in my case, the lack thereof. It was amazing to me that another straight person could be so open and so vulnerable about, the topic of sex with someone of the opposite gender, without it being weird. This person dumped their boyfriend because the sex was boring, etc. A lot of this really stuck with me. I was interested in sex as a topic, the nuances around it, rather than just wanting to do it. I was never someone to seek it out, like at a bar, because I just find that kind of gross. My mentality at the time, and today, is it'll happen when it happens. I actually came pretty close to quitting porn altogether too. Sophomore year in college, I was in the middle of drawing some 34, as you do, surprisingly detached from it at this point. It was more just a fun exercise than anything else. So imagine my surprise when, for the first time in my life, I began to have an immediate panic attack. A real panic attack. I was inconsolable. I had to walk outside and try to calm down. I was trying to convince myself that I'm not an evil person, I won't be alone forever. And that's when it really hit me for the first time since COVID. I'm 20 years old, I'm still a virgin, never even been on a legitimate date. Am I really destined to be chained down by this habit for the rest of my life? After a few days, this feeling gradually subsided, but I was still no closer to having an answer. I had a hard enough time making friends in college, and everyone was at the bar, which I hated going to because my social battery would drain too fast. I went once, tried it out, was not for me. Was I really going to be alone forever? You know what? Maybe it's time I quit porn for real. It wasn't going to be easy, but I started limiting myself to consuming it 1 day a week. Junior year in college, things really actually took a turn. For the worse? I'll leave that up to you to decide. It was around this time that my drawing skills significantly improved. I was drawing some Rule 34 that was actually somewhat good. Actually, it was starting to look great. Fantastic, even. It was starting to look so good that the process changed. Instead of doing it for fun and coming up with a fantasy afterwards, now I would sit down for hours at a time, planning out every detail of this fantasy that I would translate directly onto the canvas. Like, I draw 2 characters, and I come up with a backstory, their relationship, and how they got in this situation. It's pretty incredible, maximizing the storytelling potential of these 2 random characters. Once a week, every Sunday night, like clockwork, I would completely envelop myself in this process. It must have been the 1 day a week practice that changed everything. Now, I had an entire week to build up that energy and release it all at once, in a more powerful burst. One time, I spent, no joke, 14 hours straight at my desk, drawing with my right hand and the other somewhere else. I made some incredible art during this period that unfortunately, you'll probably never get to see. When I say that the only reason Candles looks as good as she does today is because I've drawn so much furry porn, unfortunately I mean it. I was advancing my skills and hey, look at that! My YouTube channel actually became monetized. I'm learning how to draw and I'm having so much fun doing it. I was having so much fun I almost forgot to feel ashamed that I was thinking about sex all the time. I had been away from middle school and high school for long enough, and had talked to people my age about their sex lives, that the illusion of sex itself being a sin was crumbling. After all, how can something that feels so good and so natural be so bad for you? The transition from watching porn to drawing porn ups the complexity of the issue. It's a double-edged sword. Yes, you're having fun, but now art and sex have become inextricably linked. There's no turning back now. Over the summer, I decided to try to make a YouTube video about sex. The South Park episode about sex education. I thought this video would perform mildly. I never covered South Park before this. Imagine my surprise when it really took off. Thousands of subscribers, and now thousands of dollars. Because I had decided to finally release the floodwaters of these habits. I would go from drawing it once a week to making videos about sex every other day of the week. With so much of this energy in my life everywhere, minus actually having sex, some changes begin to happen. When dealing with sex, it's easy for adjacent elements to become implicitly sexual. This is how fetishes are formed. There's a famous case of a man masturbating behind a closet door, and he eventually developed a fetish for doorknobs. True story. While this isn't quite on that level, it is still really interesting. When I draw Rule 34, I'm often listening to 2000s era pop songs, because it just oozes that kind of energy, you know what I mean? Tell me I'm wrong. Britney Spears, the Black Eyed Peas, it all carries this sexual diva vibe. Very often do I listen to this music while I'm drawing it. Now, I've done it so much, I've created an association of sex and this music, steamrolling my nostalgia for it and turning it into music that unintentionally gets me in the mood every time I hear it. This was a strange effect, and I really don't know what to do about it. But what did start happening at this point was the porn was slowly losing its power over me. Because I was also making sex-related videos, the once-a-week mentality was gone, leading to each Sunday night becoming less and less fun. Now I was in a clear enough headspace to really analyze why I was drawing all this NSFW. So it's time to answer the question. Why did I transition to drawing NSFW instead of consuming it? And why do I enjoy it so much? There's two ways to interpret this. One, it's a fun thing you do for fun, and I just discovered that I had the talent to pull it off. Or two, it's me trying to have total control over a fictional sexual partner that I'm creating entirely in my head. It's this perversion, where I create a being whose only purpose is to be sexually representative of my own fantasies. Now that is horrifying, and I really hope that isn't the case. I choose to believe it's not the latter for one important distinction. When I watch porn, I do not insert myself into the scenario. The same goes for drawing it too. After years of drawing my own NSFW, I have never once drawn myself. It is an entirely voyeuristic experience. Even if Candles happens to be in one of those drawings, it's always an alternate version who's not the candles that I use to represent myself. That is what leads to the next phase of my sexual journey. The evolution of sex, the goal, to sex, the artistic expression that I believe it truly is. This journey has taught me a lot of things. As someone who hasn't yet had sex in their life, but spent so much time thinking about sex and learning about sex from an educational and voyeuristic perspective, I've learned a lot of things about myself. I've learned what body parts will give me what sensation. I've learned what type of condom I prefer. I've learned how to measure myself for a condom. But by far, the most important thing I've learned is the true nature of sex. Sex is not a necessary evil, despite what a lot of people might tell you. Sex is an artistic expression. It's an expression of one's individual desires, their priorities, their strengths and their weaknesses, and their ego. There's a near infinite number of ways to go about having sex, and we as humans have created an entire industry around this fact. We judge others based on how good they are at it, much like an artist judges other artists for their differences in skill or interpretation. How did I come to this conclusion? By drawing NSFW that is entirely fictional, way out of the realm of possibility. And porn that never involves myself, it has helped to distinguish fantasy from reality. This, over here, is the act of intercourse. It's meant to be shared with a partner, or multiple partners, if you're into that. Why should a painter limit themselves to just one paintbrush? And over here, you have the fantasies. This is where I would categorize my own NSFW drawings. The characters I've created, their dynamics, everything. And I do mean everything, because I have entire ongoing storylines that I hope to translate into a sex ed comic one day. These drawings are an expression, but one that is entirely fictional and voyeuristic. This isn't even really sex anymore. It's a journey into pure fantasy. It's so fantastical to the point where, canonically, every character is a hermaphrodite, meaning they have both male and female sex organs, so that I can pair up any two characters, or any number of characters for that matter, to explore fantasies and squash my own sexual insecurities. Their personalities influence their artistic expression. By drawing this NSFW that is so removed from anything real, to the point where sex and gender identity has become a nebulous void, this effectively annexes this fantasy from what is real. Even if what I've discovered about the concept of nebulous identity ends up perfectly mirroring our ideal reality. Sex is such an artistic expression that I believe everyone's individual expressions can be mapped out, with this map being mostly the same, but also different for different people. Some smells have an aphrodisiac effect on certain people. People adopt fetishes with seemingly no rhyme or reason. And some people are more sexually active than others, simply because of the chemical soup in their brain. It's all interesting to me in a way that's similar to an explorer setting out in uncharted territory. The number of sexual profiles out there is infinite, and they collide with each other in new and interesting ways. I've learned to look at sex as something that is not only entirely natural, but can act as an incredible base for philosophical discussion. I'll give you an example. Interracial pornography. This is a huge category, one of the most popular. Here's a question to drive your anxiety up a wall. Is watching interracial porn racist? Is looking for porn of somebody specifically of another race considered a light form of racism? After thinking about this for years, I don't think it is. Let me ask you this. What force drives so many white people specifically to constantly declare how not racist they are? Is it because they're just so gosh darn better than their parents? No. It's a struggle for moral superiority. By declaring to the world that you are not racist, or sexist, or what have you, and by making art that specifically draws attention to how woke you are, you get to declare that you are morally superior over somebody else. Because whoever holds the most moral superiority is the name of the game now. The goal is to constantly tell yourself, yeah, I'm better. I deserve to be viewed as someone who's better. What does this have to do with interracial porn? When you watch this type of pornography, it's an extension of this effort to be morally superior. If you're imagining yourself in a scenario where you're having intercourse with someone of another race, then imagine how not racist you must be in this fantasy. I think that's why this category is so popular. People, especially white people, often express their desire to be at least morally equal to someone who's, say, black or Asian. This idea is expressed on a subconscious level through their fantasies. Maybe this doesn't describe everyone's experience. There's probably some people out there who actually just watch it because they're fantasizing a power dynamic. For me, though, this is the main psychological mechanism driving that category. People want to be morally superior. But I'll be the first to point out that there is a problem with my proposal there. I've already established that I've never inserted myself into the porn that I consume. But this phenomenon depends on the consumer imagining themselves in the scenario. So either this is an exception where I do subconsciously insert myself, or this feeling of moral superiority is in and of itself voyeuristic. Oh, I see you're having interracial sex. I'm with you, standard white guy with an unusually large penis. We are both so not racist. So which is it? Or is this entire argument constructed in my mind so that I can enjoy interracial porn guilt-free? I'm not sure, but that's what makes this conversation interesting. you can see how sex could be an interesting topic on a philosophical level. The reason I try so hard to teach effective sex ed is because exploring yourself sexually is an important step in your development. Couples usually cheat because they feel sexually unsatisfied, and they don't know how to communicate this with their partner. It's also something that's supposed to be fun, not shameful. As a man, you're kind of expected to be ashamed of yourself when you're thinking about sex. When women use sex toys, it's empowering, but when men do it, it's selfish and gross. I don't believe that, and I never have. We're all people, and we all have the right to express ourselves. As long as you can distinguish fantasy from reality, and you aren't developing fantasies that cross moral boundaries, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Ideally, it's an add-on to the relationship you already have, but most of us use it as a replacement for a relationship. A crutch. That, and for some reason, it's not really acceptable to be sexually interesting in most hetero relationships. But that is a separate issue that I'll have to sort out one day. Maybe that's the next video. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that consuming porn at 11 years old was a good thing, because it wasn't. But what it led to was a more positive idea of what sex even is, and I'm much happier this way. Yes, I continue to draw my NSFW in private. Maybe further down the timeline, I will turn on this practice and stop it altogether. Or maybe I'll find a partner who does the same thing, and we can actually share this fun hobby together. I'm hoping for the latter, and I know it's possible. I hope that my story will inspire a few others to self-reflect and ask themselves how they see sex. Is it a goal you're trying to attain? Is it something you don't find much interest in? Or are you like me and you choose to see it as an artistic expression? We humans have an incredible power. We can take something as straightforward as procreation and develop an entire culture and art scene around it. While we haven't always used these powers for good, I think that ultimately, it's not bad. The more people we have trying to educate people in a healthy, non-biased way, the safer we can feel accepting it as part of the human condition. So, my name is Candles, and I'm interested in sex. That doesn't make me a bad person, and it never will. I love you all. Good night.